Hey Algebra 1, and thanks for tuning in. We're going to be looking at lesson 9.5 part 2 today, so let's go ahead and title our notes Choosing an Efficient Method. We're going to be looking for 5 things to write in our notes today, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is just kind of review all of the methods that we've learned to how to solve for quadratic functions. This is also on page 519 of your textbook. There are a few ways here, so just make sure you're patient and write down what you see to help you decide which method is going to be efficient and the best. So factoring would be a good time when the equation can be easily factored, but the downside is some equations can't be factored. Other times you can use graphing to solve quadratic functions. That you can easily see the number of solutions, but it doesn't necessarily give you the exact solution. So if it's just asking you find the number of solutions, you can graph that really easily. If you are wanting to use square roots, you always want to make sure it's in this format right here. X squared is equal to d, but it can only be used for certain equations, only when you have x squared and another number. Other numbers included in there, like a coefficient of x, this would not be good to use for square roots. Completing the square would be best when a is equal to 1 and b is an even number, but again, it may involve some difficult calculations there. And the last one would be the quadratic formula. This one is probably the best way to use. The only downside, because it works every single time, the only downside of the quadratic formula, though, is that it takes time to do some calculations. Let's go ahead and take time now to pause here, though, and write down number 1 in your notes. And once you're done, click play so you can see a few examples being done. So here are 2 examples. The first one I have x squared minus 10x is equal to 1. And this one would be an easy one to complete the square because a is equal to 1 and b is an even number. So what I would do is first find half of 10, which is 5. And then I would do 5 squared, which is equal to 25. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides. So I have x squared minus 10x plus 25 on the left side. And then if I add 25 on the right side, I get 26. Once I have this, then I can go ahead and factor my trinomial. That is going to factor to be x minus 5 squared, still equal to 26. Again, to go in and start solving for x, I'm going to find the square root of both sides. So this is just going to keep it as x minus 5, but the square root of 26 is about 5.1 if we're just rounding to the nearest tenth. So we'll say plus or minus 5.1, and then go ahead and solve for each. So x minus 5 is equal to 5.1, and x minus 5 is equal to negative 5.1. We are going to get x is approximately 10.1, and then x is approximately negative 0.1. Okay. The second one, if we look at it, it says 2x squared minus 13x minus 24. This one is not easily factored. It's not in the format of x squared is equal to d for square roots. It would take a lot of time to do graphing, but it's not going to give us exact solutions. So what we're going to do is use the quadratic formula. So I'll have negative b, so that's negative 13, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 13 squared, minus 4 times 2 times negative 24, all over 2a, or 2 times 2. I'll always do that. All right, so we're going to get 13 plus or minus 13 squared is 169, and then 2 times 24 is 48. 48 times 4 is 192, so we're going to be adding 169 and 192 together to get 361, all over 4. And then the square root of 361 is 19, so we will have 13 plus or minus 19 over 4. So that's going to give us x is equal to 8, and then x is equal to negative 3/2, or negative 1 1/2. Okay. So these next two, let's go ahead and try them on your own. Again, you don't have to choose different methods. If you want to just do the quadratic formula, you can, because that works every single time. It just takes a little bit of time to do, but if you see maybe a method that could work, go ahead and try it. So let's go ahead and pause it here so you can try 2 and 3, and once you're done, click play. All right, so for number 2, I actually use factoring because a was equal to 1, and I can find the factors of negative 12 that would make positive 11. That's going to be x is negative 1 and x is positive 12. And then I just solved, so I got x is equal to 1 and x is equal to negative 12. Okay. For number 3, I solved using square roots. Because I can easily put it in the form x squared is equal to d. So what I'm going to do is add 5 to the other side to get the x squared by itself. So 9x squared is equal to 9. And then I'm going to get x squared by itself by dividing both sides by 9. So I get x squared is equal to 1, which means the square root of 1 is positive 1 or negative 1. Okay. Here are your last 2 to try, so let's go ahead again, pause here, try them, and then once you're done, click play. You can use any method you would like. Again, quadratic formula might be the best way because it works every single time for you, and if you don't mind using that amount of time, you can do that as well. All right, so number 4 actually is not factorable, so we're going to use the quadratic formula. So I'll have negative 1 for negative b, and then plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. It's 2 times 5. Jumping ahead there. So I'll have 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared is 1, and then negative 4 times 5 times negative 1 is positive 20. So I have 1 plus 20 all over 10. That's going to be 1 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 10, and the square root of 21 is about 4.6, so 1 plus 4.6 divided by 10, and 1 minus 4.6 divided by 10. That's going to give me my 2 solutions of 0.56 and negative 0.36. Okay. For number 5, this one I can do by solving by completing the square, because I can move this 2x over. So that would make it x squared minus 2x is equal to negative 5, because a is equal to 1 and b is an even number. Half of 2 is 1 and 1 squared is 1, so I would add 1 to both sides. So again, I'm completing the square. So I'd have x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to negative 4. X squared minus 2x plus 1 is going to be in the binomial factored of x minus 1 squared is equal to negative 4. But when you get here, you're going to notice that something happens and goes wrong. We cannot find the square of a negative number. So because of that, we have to say there are no real solutions for number 5. Okay. That's going to conclude our notes today for lesson 9.5 part 2. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.